Hello, everyone. Welcome to a brand new episode of Branded, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes and beyond the brand. I'm Sarah Glenn, your host. I am excited about today's episode. So, we are going to be talking about the strategy that is going to take you to your next up level. Now, this might be something that you're not expecting. So, the strategy that is going to take you to your next up level is self-trust. This is a conversation I have quite regularly with my clients, and it's something that is constantly infused in my messaging. And honestly, it's something I'm constantly infusing into myself. Practicing self trust, practicing believing in myself, and having the conviction that I know what is best for me and my business. That shit does not come easy. I know you know this. And so some of you might be hearing this and being like, ugh, self-trust, like whatever. Yeah, I trust myself. But do you really? Do you really? When it comes down to the big stuff and the little stuff, do you actually truly trust your own decisions? And I can honestly say, up until about 3 years ago or so, I was not really trusting my decisions. I was always looking outside of myself to find the answer for what was plaguing me, right? Like if I was feeling some sort of uneasiness about something, it was always like, well, what do you think? What do you think? Let me go research this thing. And I'm not saying that other people's opinions and research and all of that, there is a place for that 100%. But the thing that we tend to forget to actually tap into is ourselves. When you are feeling lost, confused, frustrated, misaligned, whatever word you want to use, when you are feeling that way, one of the last places we tend to look is within ourselves to find the answer. We need to flip this. We need to make it a mainstream strategy for business owners that if you are ready to get to that next up level, you have got to tap into your own self-trust. And this probably isn't going to be pretty. It probably is not going to be comfortable. But change, evolution, pivots, failure, all of these things lead to the really fucking juicy success on the other side. You have to walk through it. Like the dark spots need the light, and vice versa, right? You have to have these moments of uncertainty, but then the bravery and the courage to go within those moments of uncertainty and ask why? Why am I not trusting myself to make this choice? Why am I only looking outwardly to find the answers? A lot of us are conditioned to do this. So, I mean, I get it. Let's unlearn that shit, right? Let's unlearn that and start trusting ourselves again. When it comes to like specifically what I want to share with you on this particular podcast episode, because I know a lot of you are building businesses online, is I want to talk about your content strategy. So let's up level your content strategy by tapping into self-trust. Let's make trusting yourself the next strategy that is going to 10x your business. So if you find yourself constantly breaking promises to yourself, blaming some algorithm, application, person, coach, blaming something outside of yourself as the root of your demise, this is the work you need to be doing. Each time you're following the crowd instead of your own intuition, I mean, I get it. Trends are bright and shiny and exciting, but they're also very fleeting. Your intuition and your knowingness, like when something is for you, you will get that gut feeling that it is right for you. And just because nobody else around you is doing it does not make it wrong. But unfortunately, in the world that we live in and the social media space, it can be made to feel that way, that because you're the outlier, you're wrong. And I'm here to tell you that is so far from the truth. That is the thing that will set you apart. When you start to trust yourself, your content will immediately set you apart from the crowd. You do not want to be playing Where's Waldo with your content and hoping that your dreamy ideal client will find you amongst the crowd and the noise. Stand out. Trust yourself. When those pings of intuition happen, lean into it. Explore it a little bit. Maybe it doesn't work out. That's okay. Now you know. Now you can make an educated choice to move through to a different facet of that idea, right? Like if you have followed my journey in any capacity, you know that my brand has evolved almost regularly. Like there is always something I would say it's about every quarter or so, something pivots, something changes. It may not be huge. Like last November, I did a whole rebrand and I completely renamed my podcast. That was a big shift, mostly because I changed the name of it, right? But also the design elements of it changed as well. And what I was sharing and how I was showing up, that evolution was pretty small because it was an ongoing sort of evolution that was happening, almost like the phases of the moon, right? It was just slowly evolving into something. And once it got to a place where I was like, yes, this feels aligned. This feels like the thing I wanted it to be from the get-go. Then I felt the confidence to change the name of it, to rebrand the designing and all of that stuff. But it's always kind of happening. And because I was trusting that it was okay that it felt different, it was okay that I wanted something different than I wanted 6 months before. You do not have to guilt yourself into, oh, well, I guess what I thought I wanted 6 months ago just wasn't the thing. So I'm not going to trust myself now because I just don't want to be somebody who can't make a decision. You're growing, you're evolving. And let me tell you, if you're on the online space, that shit moves fast. Nobody is paying attention to how quickly your brand is evolving, but you. You're the one who has your eyes on it every single day. So you're the one who sees that and feels that. And you do not need anybody else's permission to make choices that feel aligned to you. So don't ignore the things that feel aligned, even if they feel scary. Actually, if they feel scary, you should probably explore it a little bit more. In all reality. And it's sad but true. And it's not surprising that we constantly find ourselves saying things like, oh, why don't I trust myself? Gosh, why don't I trust myself? Well, are you continuously breaking promises to yourself? Do you have something on your calendar that continues to be pushed to the next day and the next day and the next day? Are you on a weight loss journey and you might eat good 2 days out of the week and the rest of the days it just all hell breaks loose and you're eating pizzas and chips and ice creams and all the things and you're feeling guilty about it? That's one of the fastest ways to self-sabotage all of the progress that you're making and all of the energy and efforts that you're putting into your life and into your business is by not keeping promises to yourself. Now, we are not perfect. I am not perfect. You will break promises to yourself. Maybe not every day, but it will happen. So what can you do about that? Become hyper aware of when you do it. So for example, with like the calendars, I set very specific things on my Google Calendar every single day of the week. The only days I don't put something on the calendar typically are on Sundays because I need a day to just decompress, right? But every single day of the week, I have something on that calendar. I still work a full-time 9 to 5. So I block out the time that I spend on my 9 to 5. I block out this podcast episode right here, right now on my calendar. I block out the time that I'm going to spend on client work. I block out my consult calls. I even block out when to take 1 hour to myself every day to meditate and eat. Because if I don't, I won't. This is how I keep promises to myself. I need those calendar reminders. I need that structure. I'm not saying you need that. But I know this is a way for me to stay hyper aware of when I am breaking promises to myself. If I find myself grabbing something on my calendar and pushing it to the next day and the next day and the next day, why am I doing that? Obviously, there's a lack of importance that has been placed on that action. Why? Am I sabotaging myself? Yes. Am I breaking promises to myself? Yep. But that hyper awareness allows me to tune in, remove any guilt, and have a very clear internal conversation with myself and say, okay, Sarah, why is it that you keep putting this work off? Why is it? And if it really is just not important to me anymore, if that's the answer, delete, remove it. Obviously, that never happens with client work, but if it's something personal that I keep putting off, like, maybe there's an appointment, like a doctor's appointment, or maybe you're just not doing any kind of self-care stuff. Maybe you're not taking that 20 minutes to an hour every day to unplug, do a little meditation, go for a walk, make sure you eat something, lunch or something of the sort. You have to identify to yourself what is important to you and then keep those promises to yourself. So when we talk about like in your content strategy specifically, when I shifted my content strategy in January of 2023, it was not out of confidence that I did this. It was 100% an act of courage. And the reason I say that it was an act of courage is because I was taught a certain way through just whether it was a mentor, a coach, or me just watching what other people are doing. I had been conditioned to do my content in a way that worked for them. Awesome. That's awesome, right? I'm glad something's working for somebody else. The problem was I wasn't tapping into and asking myself, if this doesn't feel good to me, what does? What is another way that I can do this that is going to feel good to me? What is a way that I can trust that I'm going to show up every day and I'm actually going to enjoy it? And I tell you what, the shift that I made from feeling obligated to make a post every single day, 7 days a week, with some sort of new piece of information to educate and inspire and all of the things, I was feeling so burnt out. Like I literally was on the verge of just saying, fuck it, I'm done with social media. I don't want anything to do with it anymore. It's burning me out. But instead, I decided, okay, I'm going to trust that I know how to do this my way. And it's okay if it's different than everybody else. It's okay if people don't get it at first. It's okay if it doesn't even feel like it's the right thing to do at first. So I went from 7 days a week down to 5 days a week, and I got really intentional about what I was going to post on what day. And I did not diverge from that for a good 3 months or so. I needed that structure. I needed that repetitive nature in order to get in order to like rewire those brain pathways of trusting myself, of understanding that if I don't have the idea for a post, for tomorrow, and it's today at, 5 p.m., that's okay. I'm not going to stress about it. And you know what tends to happen? Every single time, this actually just happened to me this weekend, I was thinking to myself, I don't have my podcast episode done yet. Usually I have them at least a week in advance, if not further. But we've had like travel and things going on, and I just haven't done it yet. And I was thinking to myself, like, I could totally freak out about the fact that I don't have the podcast episode, like all, all the I's dotted and the T's crossed and all the things. I could freak out about it. But instead, I just thought, you know what? I think I'm going to go sit in my garden. It's really sunny. I'm going to plug into me and I'm going to kind of just see what feels good right now. I'm telling you, self-trust is the thing that will up-level the next thing you want to do in your business, whatever it is. So when it comes to your content, trust yourself. Trust that the thing that you want to share is the thing that people want to hear. Because it is the right person. Your dream ideal client is already sitting in your audience waiting for you to speak to them. They don't need somebody else's words being regurgitated to them through you. They want to hear from you. So pull your content strategy around self-trust. Ask yourself the types of questions of like, am I spending too much time looking at what other people are doing? It's probably yes. And I can tell you another thing that has vastly helped my content strategy, not being on social media as frequently. And that probably sounds really fucking like not the thing to do. But there's so much. I mean, the floodgates get opened when you are scrolling your feed. All it is just like, it's just flooding at you. And you don't have the capacity to process all of the various ideas that you were scrolling across when you're sitting on the couch and like scrolling your feed. Unless you are incredibly intentional, like, okay, I'm going to go to so-and-so's page because I want to go learn something. I want to go hear something very specific that's going to help trigger that light bulb moment for me. That's intentional. And I do that every so often. But I never just sit and scroll my feed. I never do that anymore. And it has been one of the greatest decisions I've ever made. I get incredibly intentional about the time that I spend on social media. And I also get incredibly intentional about the content that I share because I trust that my messaging is strong enough to be repurposed into multiple days of content. I trust that I don't need to show up every single day in order to stay relevant. I know that I don't need to do that. It took me some time to get there. And that's why I'm doing this podcast episode, because I don't want you to get burnt out and throw in the towel and just quit, especially if you have a passion for something. It's easy to quit. And it's easy to quit and start over. Oh my gosh, I have plenty of people that I speak to or that I see, and they jump into my DMs and they're like, oh yeah, I was in such and such business and now I'm in this business and now I'm doing this. And I love a good change and a good pivot. I love that. But if you're only doing it because you're feeling resistance and you're feeling burnt out and you just can't find your footing and your traction, it's probably because you haven't tried the new strategy of trusting yourself. So after spending all this time we've spent on following the trends and doing what everybody else is doing and looking at what's working for everybody else, it's okay to finally land on a strategy that really works. Self-trust. I know it sounds really scary, but you fucking got this. If you have a passion for something, it's for a reason. Show up, stand strong in that conviction of what you know is right for you, and the right people will be there asking to book, buy, join your teams, all the things. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I'll see you next week with a brand new episode. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to Branded, the podcast. Please rate and review. And for more information, visit socialjanemedia.com. I'll see you soon.